can't move.
Don't touch him! What if something happens to him?
If I don't help, then no one will.
The public hospital in Lagos had never known silence. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The sharp scent of antiseptic mixed with the low groans of patients and the hurried footsteps of overworked staff. Everything moved fast except people's compassion. Deposit first. The nurse's voice cut through the noise. Cold and mechanical, like a rule repeated too many times to carry any feeling. Tun stood still. Rainwater still clung to his shirt, dripping slowly onto the cold floor. His hands trembled not from the chill, but from the weight of the choice in front of him. He reached into his pocket. Slowly. A few crumpled bills lay in his palm, thin, fragile, everything he had to survive the coming week. Behind him, the man lay motionless on the stretcher. His breathing was faint. Blood had dried along his temple. No family, no identification. No one calling his name, just a stranger. A man he could walk away from, just like everyone else had. Tund closed his eyes for a brief moment. He thought of hunger. Of nights with nothing but water, of pretending he was full, just to fall asleep and forget the pain. Then he opened his eyes and looked straight at the man. Save him. First, his voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. He placed all the money on the counter. I'll earn it back later. The nurse looked at him, pausing for the first time. Not because of the money, but because of the way he said it. As if he had already accepted losing the little world he had. Somewhere inside that crowded, restless hospital, a decision had just been made. No applause, no witnesses. But in that moment, Tun's life had already begun to change. The surgery ended just before dawn. The operating room lights went out, carrying with them a fragile sense of relief that Tund didn't fully understand yet. He had been sitting in the hallway for hours, his back against the cold wall, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. He's stable, a doctor said quickly while passing by. Just 2 words, but enough for Tund to finally exhale for the first time. Since he had carried the man into the hospital, he didn't wait, didn't ask anything else. He simply stood up and quietly left before the sun rose. The next morning, Tund came back, not for a reward, not for a thank you, just to know the man was still alive. But the room was empty. The bed had been cleared. The white sheet was perfectly smooth, as if no one had ever lain there. Where is the patient? Tund asked. The nurse shook her head. Discharged early. Someone came to pick him up. Family? Not sure. That was it. No name. No message. Not a single trace that the man had ever existed in Tund's life. Tund stood there for a long moment, then turned away. Not disappointed. Just a little empty. But life didn't give him much time to dwell on it. The sun rose. Traffic roared back to life. The day's labor was waiting. He returned to carrying heavy bags of cement on his shoulders, earning small coins through sweat and patience. Dinner was still plain white rice, a little salt, nothing more. Hey, Tund. A voice laughed from behind him. You're the one who saved that guy, right? Or did you just get scammed? Laughter broke out. Others joined in. Maybe he was just acting. Now you're broke for nothing. Tund didn't respond. He just kept working. Each movement. Slow. Steady. As if their words couldn't reach him. That night, when everything quieted down, Tund sat alone outside his small home. The night breeze drifted by, carrying dust and the lingering heat of the city. He looked down at his hands, rough, calloused. These very hands had pulled a man back from the edge of life and death. No one knew. No one remembered, but he knew, and that was enough. Tund leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. He didn't save the man to be recognized. He didn't do it in exchange for anything. He did it Because in that moment, it was the only right thing he could do. And sometimes that alone is more than enough for a person. 1 week later, morning in the Lagos slum began like any other day. Harsh sunlight, dust in the air, voices calling out to each other mixed with the clanging of metal. Tund was crouched down, tying the worn laces of his shoes when a strange sound cut through the familiar noise. A low, smooth engine. Not the kind of car that belonged in a place like this. A sleek black vehicle slowly entered the narrow alley. Clean, shining, out of place. All eyes turned instantly. Neighbors stopped what they were doing. Children froze mid-run. The entire alley seemed to hold its breath. The car stopped right in front of Tund. The door opened. A man in a suit stepped out. Polished leather shoes touched the dusty ground. He looked around quick, precise, then stopped at Tund. "Are you Tund?" His voice was calm, polite, but not a question meant to be doubted. Tund stood still, confused. "Yes, that's me." The man gave a slight nod, as if confirming something he already knew. He held out a card. Thick, elegant, nothing like anything Tund had ever held before. "Our boss would like to meet you." Tund didn't take it right away. He looked at the card, then at the man, then at the car behind him where his own reflection appeared distorted. Worn clothes, old sandals, dust covering his feet. "Are you sure you've got the right person?" he asked quietly. The man shook his head. "No, it's you." A pause, brief, but enough for whispers to ripple through the alley. "What's going on? Does he know someone rich? Or is he in trouble now?" Tund heard it all, but didn't react. He slowly reached out and took the card. His fingers touched its smooth, cool surface. He opened it. Just one line. An address, Ikoe, nothing more. The name alone said everything. A place of gated mansions. A place of people Tund had only ever seen from a distance. A world not meant for him. Tund swallowed hard. His heart skipped a beat. "Who is he?" he asked. The man gave a faint smile. A smile that didn't explain anything. "Someone you've already met." Those words fell like a stone, sending ripples through Tund's mind. Met before? When? Where? The car left as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind an alley full of questions, and a young man standing still, holding a card that could change his entire life. Tund looked down, then looked up. His eyes were no longer confused, but something deeper, as if he were standing before a door, and with just one step, everything would never be the same again. The massive wooden doors opened slowly. A deep, resonant sound echoed through the stillness, as if the mansion itself was watching the one who had just stepped inside. Tund stopped at the threshold. Light from crystal chandeliers poured down, reflecting across the polished marble floor. Everything was too bright, too perfect, too unfamiliar. 2 rows of men in suits stood silently on either side, their eyes fixed forward, yet it was enough to make Tund feel like he didn't belong here. He took a step, then another. The sound of his worn shoes against the floor echoed so clearly. It made him want to stop, but then he saw him. At the center of the room, the man he had pulled out of the car on that rainy night. Now there was no blood. No weakness. No helplessness. The man sat there in a flawless suit, back straight, eyes sharp like someone accustomed to making decisions that changed the fate of hundreds of others. Tund froze. His breathing slowed. The whole world seemed to shrink, until only the 2 of them remained. A quiet voice spoke from behind. "That's Mr. Ademi, one of the richest men in Lagos." Tund didn't turn around. He didn't need confirmation. He understood. Why no one had recognized him in the hospital, why he had disappeared without a trace. And he understood that the man he had saved was no ordinary person. The entire room fell into absolute silence. Mr. Ademi stood up. Slowly. Each step he took echoed firm, heavy, not because of his strength, but because of the weight of power he carried. He stopped in front of Tun. The distance between them, just a few steps. Yet, it felt like two different worlds. On one side, everything. On the other, almost nothing. Mr. Ademi looked straight at him. His eyes were no longer cold. They were deeper. More real. You were the only one who didn't turn your back on me. His voice was low, steady, clear, not loud, but enough to command the entire room. Tun said nothing. He simply stood there. As if words no longer mattered. Mr. Ademi stepped closer, closer still. You gave. He paused for a moment, his eyes never leaving Tun. When you had nothing. Those words were not just a remark, they were recognition, they were truth. And in that moment, in a room filled with power and wealth, the poorest man was the richest of them all. Mr. Adeyemi slowly raised his hand. He didn't need to say much, just a gesture, and the entire room moved at once. A man in a black suit stepped forward. His expression was serious, a thick set of documents in his hands. Bound in an elegant hardcover, he stopped in front of Tun, placed it down. Gently. But the sound echoed like a turning point. This is a scholarship fund. Under your name. His voice was clear, emotionless. And a 30% share in a new company. No one spoke. No one moved. The entire room seemed frozen. Tun looked down at the documents, then back at Mr. Adeyemi. Everything felt too distant. Too big. Too unreal. He stepped back. Then another step. As if distance could help him understand what was happening. Why? Me? His voice was hoarse, not from emotion, but because he truly didn't understand. In this room, there were dozens of people more capable than him, richer than him, more deserving than him, and him had once had nothing. Mr. Adeyemi didn't answer right away. He looked at Tun. For a long moment, as if seeing beyond that simple exterior, into something not everyone could recognize, money. He began, his voice slow and steady. I have plenty of. No one reacted because it was obvious, but a heart like yours. He paused. His gaze deepened. Is rare. Tun stood still, not because he didn't want to speak, but because he didn't know what to say. Those words didn't feel like a reward. They felt like a choice, a responsibility. Mr. Adeyemi stepped closer. The distance between them disappeared. He placed a hand on Tun's shoulder. A light touch but firm. I don't need the smartest person. His voice lowered. I need someone who doesn't abandon others. Somewhere out there, life went on. The streets were still crowded. People still chased money, opportunity, and ambition. But in this room, something else had just happened. Not a poor boy being given money, but a human being given trust. Tun looked down at the documents once more, then slowly reached out and touched them, this time without hesitation, because he understood this was not just an opportunity. It was a door, and behind it was a life he had never even dared to imagine. Tun stood silently before a towering glass building in the heart of Lagos. The wind passed by, carrying the warmth of a new day. His reflection shimmered across the glass. No longer the skinny boy in worn-out sandals from years ago, but someone standing between two worlds. Behind him were days of hunger and being forgotten. Ahead, opportunity, responsibility, and a path that had never belonged to him before. Tun took a slow breath, then stepped forward, not as someone who got lucky but as someone chosen for his heart.